Jane Eyre is a 2011 British romantic drama film, directed by Kerry Fukunaga. The screenplay is written by Mira Buffini, based on Charlotte Bronte's novel of the same name, a classic of the Gothic and Romance genres, and the filmmaker maintains those Gothic elements. The movie is considered as a masterpiece which won and was nominated to many awards. The story of the film is about Jane Eyre, starred by Amelia Clarkson, who goes out into the world to become a governess after a bleak childhood. As she lives happily in her new possession at Thornfield Hall, she meets the dark, cold master of the house, Mr. Rochester, starred by Michael Fassbender. Jane and her employer grow close in a friendship, and she soon finds herself falling in love with him. Happiness seems to have found Jane at last, but Mr. Rochester's terrible secret stands in their own way, and Jane decided to flee again because of her self-respect and agony. However, the movie ends happily when Jane came back to Mr. Rochester as the only obstacle to their relationship is finally resolved.
Jane's character and her life changed throughout the movie. As a young child, she was calm and isolated. From the beginning of the movie, we see how Mrs. Reed used to punish her harshly. After that, she decided to send her to an orphan school. But not only that, but also she tells Mr. Brooklehurst that Jane is a liar and he would take care of that. Jane is seen to be mistreated and punished again. Meanwhile, a friendship between her and a girl called Helen begins. She becomes her best friend, which affects on her both social and moral life to develop. Helen dies after that, and years pass till Jane becomes a governess, but she wants to see life outside this school. She becomes a governess to a child called Adele in Thornfield. Her social life improves by her friendship with Mrs. Fairfax. As the time goes, a friendship grows between her and Mr. Rochester, which develops into a love story. In both phases, he has a main role in developing her life and character. When they are about to be married, she finds out that he is married to a lunatic woman. She decides to leave him, no matter how much she loves him. She chooses not to be low at her side. After that, she experiences new life and characters when she lives with Saint John and his sisters, whom she refuses his proposal, which tells us that she is now mature enough not to involve herself in such a relationship. She knows that she inherits her uncle and divides the money among her, Saint John, and his sisters, which tells us more about the maturity that she has earned and made her appreciate the meaning of a family. She finally listens to her heart, going back to Mr. Rochester, who is now blind, but she chooses to accept him as he is.
The character of Mr. Rochester is acted by Michael Fassbender. The development of Mr. Rochester's character is shown throughout the movie because before meeting Jane, his character was wild and impulsive. He was a character who defines a hypocritical society. The basis of Rochester's flawed life was his dark secrets and past along with sin. However, Jane helped him heal his wounds and confront with himself. Keeping secrets about himself and his past could do nothing good for him, but only promoted dishonesty and destroyed his relationship with Jane. And only when he could break the chains from his past, he could be free and become a new man. Towards the end of the movie, Rochester grows and develops from his suffering, allowing the two characters to move on and find happiness together. He finally pays for his sins. He becomes a suitably gentle husband for Jane, who morally guides and corrects him at the movie's end.
The main theme, which is strongly shown in this movie, is freedom and self-truth. Throughout her life, Jane searches for her true self, dignity, and freedom. That begins from the scene in which she is about to leave Mrs. Reed and tells her how much she hates her and that her father, mother, and even Mrs. Reed's husband will torture her. After her years in the Royal School, Jane wants to find freedom and to consider herself a forthright, hard-working, who depends on herself, and an honest person who is above all true to herself and her beliefs by leaving that place. Romance, abuse, rage, despair, and isolation in turn challenge her sense of self and captivate her sense of freedom throughout the movie. Yet each time she faces a challenge, from her childhood to being cheated by Mr. Rochester, she always finds out a path towards her beliefs, her independence, her true self, and what she believes to be her good and decent qualities. The theme of love in Jane Eyre covers both the romantic variety and the type encountered within a family, a sense of belonging, and a desire to be needed. The romantic love portrayed by Bronte through her novel is quite apparent. There is her great love for Rochester, which eventually wins, despite all the difficulties it faces. balanced against this love is Jane's desire for individuality, integrity, and most important, her dignity. It is this desire which leads her to refuse Rochester's hand once she learns he is still legally married to Bertha. Jane will not allow herself to become a mistress just to satisfy her emotional needs. She only accepts when his wife is already dead, despite he is blind now, but their love is much stronger than circumstances.
The scene shows Jane in her desperate flight from Thornfield across the stormy landscape. Then we have her earlier life unfolds in a series of flashbacks. Emilia Clarke has portrayed a perfect, miserable young Jane who has been landed and abused by her cruel aunt and cousins. Jane nonetheless manages to cultivate her innate decency and bolster it with self-reliance. Miss Buffy's script carries a lot of Bronte's passages and preserves to highlight the author's language in her adaptation, mainly Jane's repeated invocations of freedom as an ethical and personal idea. Yet Maya Wasawaska has represented a perfect Jane with her dignity and independence. Mr. Fassbender has focused on the necessary charisma and pathos of Mr. Rochester to assure the audience that this Jane Eyre belongs to Jane, as it should be. Yet Mr. Rochester may be an impossible character, dashing, wounded, cynical, but in somehow he is vital to both the wild romanticism and the super good sense that have kept Jane Eyre in many generations in interpretation.